Welcome. I'm Jessica Tejan, and this is the Evolving to Exceptional podcast, where we talk about reaching peak performance in our workplaces, homes, and communities so that we can live our best life possible, an exceptional life. Welcome, everybody, to this next episode in our Evolving Workplaces series, Profits, Pains, and Gains. Today, we're going to talk about how we need to pivot from profit to purpose. And I'm going to be really honest before I jump into some of the meat of this content. This topic was particularly painful and challenging for Meldina and I to write this episode today. Talking about the history and the challenges around why corporations focus on profit is steeped in a lot of tradition and a lot of fairly philosophical questions about the existence of business in particular. Just today, I was reading that a new Harvard Business Review article that was posted, so June 17th, stated, over the past decade, purpose has become a management watchword. Since 2010, it has appeared in the titles of more than 400 new businesses and leadership books and thousands of articles. And yet, many organizations struggle to define, much less live their purpose. So while the current culture is shifting towards looking at purpose as a clear a directional shift from a focus on profit, it has not yet been successful in making that shift. And the truth is that people are serving businesses rather than businesses serving people. And it's been that way for a really long time. And we believe that businesses really must exist to serve the needs of people, of human beings and all humankind. If they are not, then what is the reason for their existence? Why create something that does not benefit those that are working in it or getting something from it? In preparing for this episode, my husband shared a story with me of a court case that I found really interesting and kind of funny. So an individual was actually driving in the carpool lane, the fast lane in California that you can only drive in if you have multiple people or persons in your car. And all he had with him was his corporation papers with him. And he had been driving with these papers actually intentionally for a really long time in order to prove this point or to see if he could. But he claimed that the corporation was a legal entity and thereby he met the rules of having another person, in quotes, in the car. Ultimately, if you read the legal case and the history, it was never really decided, and this gentleman still drives around with his legal entity person in his car. I share this story to highlight how we look at a business and its reason for existing can impact its power, purpose, and impact. Is the business its own legal entity, being, or person, which must act based upon its own needs separate from the people who created it or get served by it? Or should the needs of those who are working within it or impacted by it supersede the needs of the entity itself? Which leads us to a really important foundational question. Before we can talk about what businesses focus on, we must first consider why they exist in the first place. Why do we create these businesses? And in answering this question, it's a bit of a philosophical discussion that really we could relate back to why do we exist as humans in the first place. But without going quite that deep, let's consider what most businesses do when they first start out or get created. Many businesses start their discussions around purpose, growth, or targets, looking at financial numbers and goals. How big do they want to be? How many products do they want to sell? What exactly is the reason they're being created in the first place? And it's at this point that they may choose to focus on profit. They may have a mission or purpose. They may want to provide services or sell a particular product, but they exist for a reason in order to do something, and they must choose what to focus on in order to achieve that reason.
So Jessica, why do businesses need to have a focus or create a focus? Why is that so important for a business?
So the reason for creating focus is to ensure directional alignment towards a goal or purpose and determine whether the efforts are being successful towards achieving that goal. So simply, to direct and motivate people towards accomplishing what's needed and ensuring success in that outcome. With focus, people know what they need to work on and why they need to work on it. They know when they're being successful and when they're not being successful. They can identify when what they're doing is not aligned with the direction of the business. So, like, if we pause for a second, Meldina, and we break this down just a little bit, businesses exist to do something, and they have to identify what exactly it is they're going to do in order to focus those efforts on that activity.
And then why do many businesses choose to focus on profit?
Profit takes us back to kind of the history of how we got here with business. And this was walking through kind of this history. Some of it we know, some of it you'd have to read about to really understand. But if you go way back in history, individuals would exchange their items of product or services for other items of product or services. And then over time, money was created as a means to transfer value without having to have specific exchanges of product or services. As businesses became increasingly complex, so did the models for where to focus to generate results. So like, slowing down just a little bit, go way back, people would be part of different estates or different governments or different groups that would contribute their efforts or their energy or their services or their product in exchange for some bit of profit or some bit of return, right? And then, since about the 1970s and 1980s, the focus shifted to and has been on shareholder value, which implies that the ultimate measure of a company's success is the extent to which it enriches shareholders. This was first promoted by the Friedman Doctrine and later by Jack Welch, that the sole purpose of the corporation is to maximize the value to its stockholders or shareholders.
So Jessica, what does that mean? What does maximizing the value to stockholders and shareholders actually mean?
Yeah, so, it's legal jargon, right? And without going into the complex history of shareholder value, suffice it to say that the corporate world, by and large, has adopted the model that the corporation owes a legal duty to the shareholders first. So the people that own shares of the company. And they have a duty to them first and foremost to maximize their value. And much of this is rooted in legal analysis of laws that vary by state regarding the fiduciary duties or responsibilities of the directors to make decisions on the basis of the best interests of shareholders. However, the basis of that rationale is fraught with a lot of different opinions. Even the Supreme Court in a Hobby Lobby case a number of years ago stated that modern corporate law does not require for-profit corporations to pursue profit at the expense of everything else, and many do not. So it's highly contested as to whether there is a legal duty for corporations to serve the interests of shareholder value. Now, if you trace it back, think back, if one person owns a business, they are the shareholder. And so now their actions are always in the best interest of themselves, of the shareholder. As corporations sold to multiple different people, now there's multiple people that hold those shares. Now the responsibility is to all those people who own shares of the corporation. Now, those are not necessarily the people who work in or are served by the corporation.
So where does that leave the discussion on profit being the primary purpose of a business?
Most businesses, and I think we know this, whether they state a purpose or not, still focus primarily on profit as a measure of success. Many businesses believe this is the best model and they followed it for decades. And even businesses that try to state a purpose have failed to execute on that successfully, have failed to really make that the true center of what drives their businesses. Now, not everybody agrees with that model. Mark Benehoff, CEO of Salesforce, has actually come out and talked about how maximizing profits for shareholders has actually brought terrible economic, racial, and health inequalities. That there's been a negative impact on society at large, as well as each of us as individuals, by having our businesses, our corporations be focused on this profit element rather than purpose. And so, inclusion, businesses focus primarily on profit because that's the way it works. That seems to be the most common answer.
And then what are the problems with focusing on a profit for the corporation? Those terrible economic, racial, and health inequities, where are those coming from?
Well, there is no problem with focusing on profit for the corporation or for the business. The business itself, focusing on profit, makes sense. That's what's in the best interest of the business, the company, the entity, the legal documents in the front seat of that gentleman's car, right? The business and the focus on profit does make sense for just the business. But if we think about it in terms of serving people, if we go back to the premise that our businesses should be built to serve the people who work in them or are impacted by them, one of the first problems I want to highlight about a focus on profit is that profit is about what you get, not what you do, which means it's ignoring key performance elements. So profit or money isn't about what you are doing, but what you're getting. For employees, that means focusing on what I'm going to get rather than what I need to be doing to make an impact, to create results. Can you see how this mode of thinking might ultimately have a negative impact?
Yeah, because focusing on profit ignores all the effort and work that I'm putting in to get there. All I'm caring about is that end result and not necessarily all the work I put into it to get there.
Exactly. People become focused on the money that they actually don't have yet, instead of creating the impact, doing the work that they need to do to achieve it.
And then how does that have a negative impact? What happens as a result of that?
Yeah, so it means that things like products and services themselves and that customer service can be negatively impacted. So instead of focusing on how to deliver the best product or the best service or delivered in the best way with really excellent stellar quality of service, we're focused on how to eke out as much profit as possible, how to get the most money we can. One of the businesses we work with, she said to me just the other day that she's always worked for bosses who, when they went to price things, would say, what's the least amount of work I can do for the most amount of money? So it's that kind of mentality. And actually, I've seen it where leaders can spend hours and hours looking at spreadsheets and projections and numbers that are not actually generating results. They are so focused on their numbers, updating their numbers, providing those reports, looking at those metrics, than they are, rather than focusing on or rather than looking at the activities that are needed to actually generate what's put into those projections and the results that they need. And then when it goes wrong, so when they don't hit their targets, when inevitably you miss a goal that you set, it leads to a blame game. People start pointing fingers to avoid responsibility for not hitting targets that they were focused on, instead of the activities they needed to be doing to actually achieve them, instead of what they needed to accomplish in order to get the growth or get the results that they wanted in terms of financial performance.
Jessica, I've got a good example here. It was one of my first jobs. So I was like 16, 17. I worked as a cashier at a department store where a pretty big deal was making sure that everyone that came into our store were part of our rewards program. And the lengths that I saw some cashiers go to, because we had metrics that we had to meet on a regular basis, right? I think we met like weekly, and we were set a target of like, this is how many people you've got to convert. If they're a non-member, we got to convert them over to be a member. And the lengths that I saw some people go to try to convert these, non-members when they would come in. I mean, I saw people use fake email addresses, fake phone numbers to try to get people to sign up. They would use all kinds of weird, unethical things to try to get that, because they were so focused on that end result. They know that they needed to convert X amount of people by the end of the week, and they were going to get there no matter how they were going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great example of where when you're focused on the outcome or what you're going to get rather than what it is you're doing to make an impact. Another problem that I think kind of stems or comes through that is that profit does not motivate people to act. In fact, it actually has a negative impact. So what do we mean by motivation? Motivation is a force that makes people act, set goals, and achieve them. In order to take action, people need to know what to do, why to do it, and want to do it. So the what to do is our head brain, is that part of our knowing what those steps are. The want to do is our heart brain. It's the desire and the commitment and the value to actually do it. The why to do it is our gut. Motivation to take action from within is actually sourced out of our gut brain as humans. It's part of our oldest brain, which means it was impacted by the values and experiences we had growing up. So if you follow neuroscience and you know about the brains and the different parts of our body, the neurons that are within our gut are the ones that hold on to our identity and the things that motivate us to act, or the things that put us into motion. Can you see, Meldina, how maybe the way you were raised may have impacted what motivates you today?
Oh, absolutely. Not so much what motivates me today, but when I first started my career, I'm a first generation college grad, working out in the corporate world. Both my parents work manual labor jobs. They immigrated from Bosnia to America when I was 3. So for them, titles were a really big deal, and that's all I heard about. It was a sign of respect. Anyone that had a really big title, there was just that kind of earned respect automatically. And for me, hearing that growing up, that's what motivated me initially when I entered the corporate world. I was all about the titles. If I didn't get a title change within a year, I was like, what's going on? Clearly something's not right. I might have been doing more, but what motivated me initially was to get that higher title each time. And that was because that's what motivated me. I wanted to make my parents proud. And so, now looking back, I laugh because I'm like, oh, it is so much more than just the title. But thinking back on that, it definitely, I can see the correlation there of how I was raised kind of impacted what initially motivated me.
And that comes from all those experiences that we had growing up, right? All of what was valued by our parents while we were being raised. And that was instilled early in our lives. And that is what then moves people to action. And there's a set of different types of motivators, both intrinsic and extrinsic. So internal motivators and external motivators. And our gut brain is the why. Why is this important to me? Why should I take action? Why should I care about doing this? And so if you think about the internal motivators, some people are motivated by learning, a desire to grow. They're motivated by attitude, a desire to change how other people think or how other people feel, by achievement, getting things done. Some are motivated by creation or creating, the desire to make something new. And then others are motivated by physiological needs, the need to most literally have your physical needs met. Then there's external motivators, and there's incentives, so the financial motivators to make money, etc. There's fear, so there's motivations based on I could lose my job. There's motivations based on power, wanting control over your life, others, your environment. And then there's an external motivator around affiliation or social need to have belonging and acceptance and connection with others. So these are the different kinds of motivators that a workplace might use to generate results.
So, Jessica, can we have a combination of those motivators? Does it all have to be internal or just external?
So it's a good question. I think when it comes to workplaces in particular, that you have the most control over the external motivators. I think that the internal motivators have a much bigger impact on getting people to take action. The things that we naturally desire are going to have the biggest impact, but it's the extrinsic or the external motivators that businesses can use or have control over to have influence. And so really, if businesses want to get the most out of their people, they actually have to tap into these different motivations and figure out what's going to drive people to generate the results that they want to generate.
And then that's why it's really important for managers and leaders to really know who their people are, the people that they're leading, who their employees are, their preferences, what really gets them motivated so that they can get to those results.
At an individual level, absolutely. Yes. So at an individual level, it gets down to like the specific needs of a person. But at a corporate level or at a business level, if we take it a step up, then we're really looking at how do we motivate and drive or direct the business at that level, not at an individualistic level, but at an overall business level.
So then, Jessica, how does the focus of a business affect people and profits?
So there's quite a bit of research and studies that have been done here. According to a study by Harvard Business Review, motivation can actually increase gross profits by 47%. So the impact or the results that come from having people focus on what impact they're making rather than on the profit, rather than on the result, are significant. But they've also looked at that bottom line mentality or that profit focus mentality. And that's actually shown to negatively impact performance results, even when both the manager and the employee are focused on the same thing. Even when they're aligned, it actually negatively impacts results. And employees in businesses where the CEO is really focused on profit actually feel more negatively towards the business, have a negative impression of the business that they're working for. And there was a brand new survey, according to the Harvard Business Review, that purpose is more than twice as important as traditional motivators like compensation and career development. So where we used to think that by paying people, we were motivating them to come do their job, by giving them opportunities to grow their pay, grow their career in advance, that we would be motivating them to do their job. The truth is that you get twice as much motivation from purpose than you do from those traditional motivators. And of those organizations that are successful and able to focus on purpose, 90% of them deliver growth in profits at or above the industry average. So they are performing at least as good as the average organization, most of them above it, by focusing on purpose rather than profit.
I think, Jessica, we also saw with, the Great Resignation, I saw a lot of my close friends leaving their jobs simply because they didn't agree with what they were doing or didn't feel that internal motivation to go to work each day. And with the abundance of jobs and everyone was hiring, it seemed like everyone kind of took that opportunity to go search for a place where they could align with their mission, their values, the purpose of the company, so they could really rally behind it versus just sticking through, which I know during COVID, a lot of people did because things were so uncertain then. But once we started to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, people, I think, started to wake up and realize there's something more out there that I need. from my job versus just that paycheck versus just those benefits. And I think we're definitely seeing that.
Well, and I think that actually leads to one of the problems, one of the other problems with profit, which is that money and profit mean different things to different people. And that money is really only a symbol. It's not a tangible value in and of itself. And money's as valuable as it can be used to purchase something or some service. So that profit is only going to be as valuable as it's seen by or experienced by the people who get to receive it. And in many cases, the value of money in exchange for things or services actually varies greatly by person or place, right? What costs something in this country, a certain amount is going to cost something completely different elsewhere in the world, which means money and profit on its own is almost entirely subjective value determined by those who are exchanging it at a single point in time based on the economics and the supply and demand and all of those other factors. So likewise, profit is short-sighted. It's really limited to the current state and time rather than the long-term benefits like growth or impact on the world or the consequences of the harm caused or the future conflicts. So if you think about people that were making those value judgments for themselves of what they align with, what aligns with who they are, I think it fits with what really matters to people and what does profit mean to people in the scheme of the work that they're doing and the impact that that business is having.
We got a good example of this. My husband actually works for one of his VPs at his current employer. I mean, this guy makes tons of money, right? He's one of the highest ranked employees at the company, and he drives like an old, super beat up car. And it's like everyone constantly talks about it. They're like, why does he not get a better car? I mean, he can definitely afford it. Nobody knows his exact salary, right? But everyone knows it's definitely enough to get himself a brand new, sparkly, shiny car. And it's because to him, it means something different. That money, that the income is, he can buy it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he values it as much and to go out and get it when he's perfectly content with his whatever it is, 1980s, Buick or whatever it is.
Right. So where is that value judgment? Where do people put value on? One of the last problems with a focus on profit is that profit doesn't equate to business growth and expanded success. So companies can actually make more money in a particular year, but that doesn't necessarily help that business grow. To make more money, businesses must reinvest in more resources and tools to help them sustain their growth. When they're focused on short-term return, they actually may forego long-term investment. And that focus on profit can cause leaders not to invest when they need to get a return. So the ideal time, it might be the ideal time to invest, but if it doesn't coincide with a time where they can do so and not risk a return, not risk hitting their profit goals, they may miss that opportunity. They may choose not to invest when they really need to be. So an examples of this might be not investing in trainings when financials are down, or not sending employees to get the skills that they need because it's time wasted. Those would be examples of not investing, in business growth. Some other, take it beyond just the employee. It's investment in tools and technology, investment in additional heads or people in order to serve your customers or meet your needs, that when we are so focused on delivering the short-term profit, we may miss when we most need to invest to expand. And some businesses know well the need to invest even at the expense of potential losses at certain points in the business in order to grow the business.
I can't count the number of times we've heard when we put on trainings in the past that were like 3 days long, which were very valuable trainings, but then having that back and forth with the manager to try to convince them that this was time well spent for their employee, because they were so focused on, well, we got to get them back in at their desk, pushing out quotes, building the products, going out and doing the services, that they lost sight of the potential benefits that they could get if this person would have gone to that 3-day long training. It is an investment up front, but in the long term, it would have grown that individual so that they could be more profitable in the future.
And I think I like to refer to that as the pull of profit. And certainly as we've been building this business, I've experienced the recurring pull of profit. And I equate the feeling to a headache. It isn't there all the time, but when it does show up, you feel a deep desire to take action on it and alleviate the pain, even if you know it's going to be remedied soon on its own. And so we tend to pivot back to profit when the fear of not making enough money, not hitting the targets that we set out that we need to hit kicks in. That's when we begin to question our time prioritization and start to focus back on profit, start to focus back on profit rather than purpose. But if we peel back the layers a bit, the truth is what I just said at the beginning of this episode. Businesses must exist to serve the needs of people, of human beings and all humankind, not the other way around. We don't want to exist as humans just to serve the needs of these corporations, these legal entities created on paper and computers. I mean, can you imagine? And you actually really start to see a world that looks as if it is the Matrix. We start to see a world where we are living in a Matrix where these companies or these businesses are their own entities, directing and having humans to meet their needs. That's not the world we want to live in. Why would we create something that does not benefit those that are working in it or getting something from it? The truth is we shouldn't. We must create businesses that benefit people. And sure, money and profits also, to some extent, benefit people. But there are far more benefits and impacts of businesses than just generating income. Most of us know that the most important resources in life are things money cannot buy. Things like time, health, life, safety, happiness, and connection. The things that we spend most of our life in pursuit of and really want to have are not things that we can purchase with money. And we must consider first and foremost the impact of our businesses on those that they're meant to benefit. And no matter what we do, we can try to motivate employees with like slogans and bonuses. But if our businesses, if our companies can't achieve excellence, if they can't motivate their people by helping them to understand why they're coming to work every day, why what they're doing matters, why they're performing, you're not going to see the effects. You're not going to see the results that we want to see in the business world. So this was a really interesting topic, I think, for both of us to explore and to understand and to think about, especially as we think about businesses as beings and businesses as made up of living beings. And that if they exist, their core purpose must be for those that they are impacting or that are working within them. So thank you to everybody for participating in this episode on pivoting from profit to purpose. We will be talking about another topic related to our evolving workplaces model and the challenges in the workplace today next week, and we will look forward to sharing more with you then. Have a wonderful rest of your week.